everyone. It's Gennie and Hannah with 4AR People.
Hello, friends.
The last time we left you, we covered the first part of our legislative summary. And we talked about all the things that they prioritized with the supermajority and the governor. And then this time we're going to talk about what they did not prioritize, what they left on the table, what they could have done to actually help Arkansans get ahead or be safer. And then we will give a few shout outs to some things that were done that were good. But yeah, welcome to the second part of our legislative summary. Hannah, how are you?
I'm good. It was a good week without the legislature. So,
Did you get some sleep?
I actually did. I can't say that my sleep schedule is ideal, but I got more sleep than I have been. So,
I mean, to be fair, I don't think your sleep schedule has ever been ideal, but
yeah.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
You
you.
no longer have outside factors making your
Right.
sleep schedule unideal.
Right. It's just my own, mental instability, I guess. But
Same girl, same. Um, well, let's talk about, quick recap. So last time we talked about how the legislature focused on this kind of extremist performative policy that was really about just like making liberals cry their radical left tears, some really hateful bills that targeted LGBTQ Arkansans, especially trans people, bills that catered to big lobby and really promoted government overreach, which was kind of antithetical to what the governor said she was going to do. Few casual bills that, will gut public education and punish poor people, some kind of meaningless election integrity bills, and then of course the big criminal justice package. But let's chat about some things that they could have done, or that they didn't do. And maybe we'll start with this category, Hannah, of like some legislation that could have made us safer, since crime and criminal justice reform is like a big theme of this supermajority. And obviously crime is something that is on a lot of people's minds, especially if you live in central Arkansas and more metropolitan areas of the state. That's kind of funny to say. There's not like a lot of super metropolitan areas in Arkansas, but
yeah.
Larger cities, that this is something that people think about. I mean, I'm a parent, I've got kids. I moved a couple years ago because my old neighborhood was experiencing, there's a lot of people experiencing homelessness, and there was a lot of kind of drug situations happening around us, and ended in like some people busting into my backyard with their meth that they were trying to sell, and the police chasing them. And it was a whole thing. And, it was like, we deserve to be safe as community members. And what is actually going to help us become safer as a society, as a state, but then importantly in these cities and areas where crime is really exploding and ticking up, like what could we have done? Do you want to talk about that, Hannah? Like some things that either they left on the table or voted down that would have actually helped make us safer, but they didn't do. They didn't prioritize.
Yeah. And I kind of like the last, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. Oh goodness. 5 years that I've lived in Little Rock. I've been like I live near Central and now I live downtown, and there's a lot of gun violence in both of those areas, a lot of unhoused people. And one of the things that I think they could have done and like could have pushed forward, but they killed, with universal background checks. Just because that is really important. And like I said, we have a lot of gun violence, especially in these areas. I watched a drive-by shooting happen from my window when I live next to Central. I've heard, gunshots and saw news reports the next day again happen like down the street from where I currently live. And it's like you're almost numb to it to a certain extent. Like I remember my roommate when I lived at Central ran into my room and we just like watched it happen. I mean, because there's nothing else that you can do. You get down, you make sure that nothing else is going on. But like situations like that are scary because you don't know if they're coming back around, what's gonna happen. And I don't know, in a world where we have more guns than people, um, or in a country, I should say, not a world, but in a country where there's more guns than people, it's concerning. And you know, I don't have kids, but I can only imagine what it feels like to have a kid, especially when we have a lot of you know, school shootings. And I don't know, like it makes you not want to have children. It makes you just want to like
Yeah.
stay home and not go out even. So I think they really dropped the ball on that one in particular.
I think I saw a report, and I can find it to corroborate this, but I believe I saw a report recently, I think after what happened in Nashville and then Kentucky, um, that gun violence is now the leading cause of death for children in America.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
And that
It,
is
it used to be car accidents and now it's guns.
gun violence. And like crime, criminals using guns is part of that, but also so much of gun violence is just easy access to guns. It's easy
Mhm.
access to guns in your home, um, guns in public, accidents involving guns. Like there is just, yes, it's a right. It's a Second Amendment right. Let's let it be a right. And also let's try to actually curb gun violence. Like, can we not prioritize common sense gun laws? Like it just like, let's just use our brains. Um, you know, there was this interesting, I saw a letter in the paper a couple weeks ago, about somebody saying like, listen, when you just say that guns are the problem, it makes me want to like go out and just buy all the guns. And I thought that was a really telling letter to the editor in the paper, because that was somebody who was being honest about the situation of like, when you tell me that we need to start getting rid of guns, like it just makes me want to like hoard, and I'm going to go out and do it. And that's really, I think, at the crux of so much of this tension between like 2A advocates on the kind of extreme side, and then like those wanting to just do some common sense measures to get this under control, is that can you introspect for just a second and be like, I understand that this makes me like, it makes me mad. It makes me feel like somebody's going to take something away from me, but just like calm down for a minute and think about this statistic that gun violence is the number one reason that kids die in America.
Mhm. Well, and I
And
think we can also agree that like we don't want people who are not like mentally sound possessing guns because they can harm other people and themselves. And that's why like background checks are important. Um,
right. And they also killed the red flag law bill that was proposed late in session. And that bill would have made it so that law enforcement, if they, you know, had a call about like domestic violence and they went there and they were investigating, and this person has a weapon, legally has a permit for a firearm, that in the instance of a domestic violence accusation or issue, they could then take that firearm from that person in order to protect a potential threat to that person's partner or spouse or whatever. And that's like another huge problem, is just like in-home domestic assault and the use of weapons, and that, like, why not? Like, why not have that? What is bad about removing a firearm from somebody who is potentially going to harm a spouse or a family member and is showing signs of that? I don't know. I mean, this is where I get it. Like I get that this issue is complicated, and I get that people don't want their rights taken away. And that's not what this is. This is not removing rights. This is just thinking about things from a perspective of like, there are some really simple things that we could do to mitigate gun violence and to mitigate death. And why wouldn't we want to do that? How many kids have to die?
Right. Right.
Ugh.
A
Okay.
heavy topic.
That was more depressing than I anticipated it being. There are also some things left on the table that could just like tangibly make people's lives better or help them. Some good bills that were proposed that would address our very strict anti-abortion laws in the state. Like I know of one that my representative ran that would have allowed in-state abortion in the cases of lethal fetal abnormalities. So people who get the really unfortunate news that their fetus cannot live outside the womb after a certain point are forced to carry those pregnancies to term or have to find accommodations out of state. And it's a really, really, really small number of pregnancies that fall into that category. And we heard like really great testimony from providers and from people who have experienced this. And like, it just was immediately shot down. Another bill, no abortion for cases of rape or incest, another one that was going to address that issue. So again, like, I mean, y'all, our 11-year-old girls can get raped and pregnant and have to carry those pregnancies to term. Like that is just wild. It is wild. Like that is the state that we live in right now. And our legislature just refused, our supermajority refused to even consider those.
Yeah. I don't really have much to add because I think you said it all. But it's really gross. And, you know, I feel like a lot of the time, or people will probably say that we're fear mongering. But the thing is like, this is going to happen, unfortunately. And like, it's already
It
happening.
does. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
happening.
it's
Has
happening currently. And now those young girls have no option. And that's so upsetting. Like, I feel like I'm going to cry. It's morning.
Yeah. Well, it plays into all of these other issues that our legislature wants to like mitigate or says that they care about. Like when young women are forced to carry pregnancies to terms and they don't have support structures and social safety nets in place, like that leads to poverty. That leads to single family homes. That leads to people needing things like SNAP benefits. And then we have this rhetoric from our supermajority that it's like, well, we need to like decrease government dependency. And it's like you're setting people up to fail from the beginning. You're
Right.
setting people up to fail. And then you have this like end goal, expectation, or outcome, which is like, well, people should just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. But like you are literally cutting off their bootstraps from the time they are really from the time they can go to school, especially if we defund public education over time. It is like we are eroding all of these mechanisms by which people could technically pull up a bootstrap to lean into that metaphor. But like, and then we're like shaming them on the back end and saying that they're like too dependent on government. But it's like the government is literally removing and working against ways that would actually help these people and communities and groups like be mobile economically and be able to be self-sufficient and have success. And like people deserve that. Like it doesn't matter, like to borrow a phrase from the governor, like it doesn't matter what zip code you live in. Like if you're entitled to school choice as a parent and as a student, I think you should also be entitled to like a healthy life and the ability to like be a teenage girl and not worried about getting raped and having to be forced into birthing that child when you're young. And I don't know, like we could go on and on about this. It's just, it's all connected. And that's really what we're trying to help people see is that like these kind of more specific policies that were left on the table really would help a lot of Arkansans in the future if we just invested in them and mitigate some of the things that the supermajority says they don't want to see. wild. It's mind-boggling. The mental gymnastics that it takes to like craft that narrative, and I don't know.
Yeah, and especially to like craft a narrative for like one particular issue that is so different than the other narratives that you're using for these other issues, but they're all the same. You know, I mean, I know that's what you're talking about and what you said, but it really does blow my mind. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do think it's funny kind of that all of these Republicans are now like pro-choice simply because of school choice. I think we should run with that.
Yeah. Well, they're also like my body, my choice when it comes to masks. So,
Right.
and vaccines. Um,
It only matters when it applies to them, essentially.
I mean, I think that's our supermajority and our state leadership in a nutshell, is like this for us and nothing for the rest of you.
Mm-hmm.
And good luck.
Yeah. Good luck.
Good luck. And we'll be watching, and we're ready to remove things that could potentially help you. So some examples of some things that were either not addressed or left on the table. So we mentioned the abortion exceptions. There was this bill that would have really given people who are who have received the death penalty, but they're mentally ill, it would have allowed them to not have the death penalty as a sentence. If you could prove that they were had a mental illness, that was killed. So, I mean, Lord, there was the kind of gutting of the SNAP asset increase bill towards the end of session. I really loved this bill. It was bipartisan. It was gonna people who receive SNAP benefits, which is like the new term for food stamps. There are limits on how much money you can have saved in a bank account or whatever assets that you own. There was this very small limit that you could have in order to qualify. And this would have substantially increased that limit for assets, which allows individuals who are on SNAP to save money. And being able to save money is a really important factor to get out of poverty, to get out of the cycle of poverty. And it was gutted like at the last minute because lobbyists didn't like it and the governor didn't like it. Do you have something to say about this, Hannah?
Yeah, well, it's just like, they constantly talk about inflation and the cost of living and like how groceries are so expensive now and like working people can't afford it. And this is such an easy way to help those people who are actually struggling. Like, I got a raise this year and I'm not really seeing it because my rent went up, groceries are expensive. And like, I'm not saying that I don't make enough money. I'm saying that it's, you know, it just like, I'm not feeling that. And I make significantly more than some other people in our state. And if
Yeah.
I'm hurting, then they're hurting, and like people in the legislature don't have that thought process, or at least the governor in particular for this one bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very clear that they did not want to pass any legislation that would help working lower income Arkansans.
Mm-hmm.
Now that also applied to Arkansans who are lower income that are not working, like people who, receive
Right.
public housing now have a requirement to work. So it's all under this argument of like work equals dignity. And I'm like, do they think that people who are low income, like don't have dignity? Because that in and of itself is so problematic. Like people who are middle to low income are like, they have so much dignity and they work themselves to the bone.
Literally the backbone of our country.
Literally
Right.
the back. Yeah. Do you remember in 2020 when we were like, oh, the essential workers, like, oh, thank you so much. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you so much. And now it's like, they
Mm-hmm.
need, I don't know, they need to try harder. They need to have more dignity. And I'm like, pretty sure they have more dignity than our state legislature.
Mm-hmm.
That's really upsetting. It's really upsetting. There are plenty of us who live paycheck to paycheck, who have a lot of dignity. There are plenty of us who can't even make ends meet that have plenty of dignity. And so I have some choice words for those lawmakers if they would like to hear them off. Similarly, they passed this big income tax break bill, but it really only benefits the 20% of top earners and large corporations.
Yep.
Like that's just another, like, you think it's for you and it's really not.
Yeah. I mean, people hear tax cuts and they get excited because they don't want to pay more taxes. But when you really start looking into it, it's like, who's really benefiting? Because it's not me.
Yeah. And it's like, if you get $50 back at the end of the year, like, does that even matter? That kind of is insulting to me.
Yeah.
And then you think about top earners getting thousands or hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars back.
And just to, I don't know if this is even an argument, but you get $50 back. Back in my, back in my college days, like I could go donate plasma and get $50.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I did a lot and I hated it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sucks. They did not do classified public school staff salary increases. And that was like not rumored. Like, I'm pretty sure that when Senator Ledding ran that bill in Senate Education, that the Learn sponsor, Senator Brian Davis, said, like, we need to table this because this is going to be part of Learns. So there was this understanding that it was going to be part of Learns and it wasn't. And then she later apologized for that and said, like, she was mistaken and it wasn't part of Learns. But like, that just completely went unaddressed. And it could have been addressed. There was a bill for that.
There was literally a bill for it.
And they decided not to take it up. They literally asked for it to be tabled. So there's that. Again, just things that they could have done that they intentionally chose not to do, that they intentionally chose to kill. And then
oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, when you compare that to what we talked about last week, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, definitely. And this one is not, I mean, I guess it's not in the same vein, but something that's really easy and that pretty much every other state has is online voter registration. And we've been trying to get this passed, to my knowledge, at least since 2017. So, it's pretty wild. And especially this session, there are a couple people who were for it last session, and then all of a sudden we're not for it.
That was very strange.
The way people change, I don't get it.
And we're just like one of, is it 6 states? I'm gonna muck up.
It's under 10. I'm like 80% sure. We should probably Google it.
Sorry about my phone ringing. I forgot to turn it on silent.
I didn't even hear it.
My bad. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, we're just like one of a handful of states that don't have it. And it's like, if you think about all the stuff we do online, like we bank online, we like submit our tax returns online with all of that personal information, and like people are worried about voter fraud. Like, no, that's BS.
It's so funny to me because we won't do online voter registration, but we will require people to present ID,
digital ID
to get on Facebook and Twitter. Like, what?
Oh, it's just a barrel of.
And like, our voter registration system is in our state, like it's specific to Arkansas. And so like there are protections, like cyber protections for that. And in contrast, when you think about social media, which is worldwide, and like, yes, there are like cyber protection, I'm sure, but like, is that going to stop when we have to provide digital ID? I don't know. I just don't think these people understand technology at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, there were also some things that like we just did not even see pop up at all. And in fact, I need to kind of like go in here and tweak some of these things as I'm talking about it in real time, because we've already talked about it. But like we didn't really see any attempt for renters' rights, like a renters' bill of rights this session, like we did last session, which I know that there are a lot of legislators that have tried to champion this and run it through and have been working on this a long time. But like, again, that is just like another policy idea that can actually help people get out of poverty. Like when you can provide stable, when someone can have stable housing, stable and affordable housing, that really helps our communities become safer.
Stable and safe. Like there are so many
Stable and safe housing. Yes.
houses and apartments in our state that are probably not up to code, that probably have holes in the roof, that don't have AC, that what like don't have clean water. Like that is also a thing that people don't think about. And like the last session they got bare minimum the bare minimum. Like they basically just stripped the bill of all of the good stuff just to make people feel a little bit better. And it just like that doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it
Yeah.
at all. Especially now when rent prices are going up, and when rent goes up, that doesn't necessarily mean the quality of your housing goes up. It just means that you have to pay more for wherever you're staying. Um,
Yeah. My rent has gone up 2 years in a row now. About to be priced out of my little house. That is 1,000 square feet. So yeah, yeah. So housing vouchers, rental rights, child nutrition and food assistance programs,
mhm.
universal lunches at schools, expanding a child tax credit or creating a state earned income tax credit or child allowance, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation. These are all proven, data-driven policies proven to get people out of poverty. And like, where did we see that this session?
If
Maybe
anything,
I missed it, but
right,
I
right.
don't
I mean, if anything, we just saw like the push for more people to be in poverty, and Arkansas is already like one of the poorest states in the nation.
Yeah, I mean, and the few things that they did try to do were either gutted or killed.
Yep.
So, like, again, what did they prioritize? Owning the libs, government overreach, Sarah Sanders's political future. That's what they prioritized. What did they not even touch? Things that actually help people.
Mm-hmm.
Because that help people. And like, I don't care what political party you're in. I don't even care if you identify with the political party. If you live in this state, this should matter. This should matter to you because there were good bills like the SNAP asset increase that was run by a Republican. That was a Republican sponsored bill. And that was gutted because the governor didn't like it, helping people perhaps get out of poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about that. Like, so it's not a partisan issue. This is an Arkansas government issue. This is an Arkansas extremist issue. When we cede power and control to the people that are controlling our legislature and our state right now, we lose. We're going to get sicker, we're going to get poorer, we're going to die sooner. Like these are not exaggerations. Where we rank poorly for things like maternal mortality, like that's only going to increase. Or we're gonna fail even more than we're already failing because they don't address the issues that need addressing. And it's such a shame. They could have done it. They could have done it. They had the money and the votes, and they just didn't do it because they don't seem to care. That's really sad.
Yep. Or they care more about their political future than they do the people that they represent.
That's right.
And
Outer.
yeah, it's just I don't know. This new administration is really, I hope that none of this happens, right? Like I hope that we don't end up worse than we are, but like it's gonna happen, I'm afraid. And we need to be prepared, and we need to be prepared to vote and get some new people in there. Regardless of party, like we just need people with backbones who won't just
Yes.
cave.
Yeah, like I think that so many of these districts where they have had these kind of same folks in office, like there needs to be a reckoning. There needs to be a reckoning with those representatives, those senators, where those constituents start demanding either responsibility on behalf of those representatives, or they need to replace them, because so many of these folks, I think, like they just think like, oh well, they're from my town, like I trust them. And then like if they saw the things that they had said and the way that they had voted and the policies that they proposed and the things that they voted against, like they would probably be shocked. They would be shocked because it's not aligned with the interests of their own communities. I mean, how many of them voted for Learns? That is eventually going to probably decimate smaller districts and schools. Despite people from those districts saying, please don't vote for this. So at what point, you know, like we have the power as constituents to hold them accountable. I think that's kind of what we're getting at, is like the power does rest with the voters, and the ultimate way you can hold a state lawmaker to account is at the ballot box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also think town halls are fun if anyone wants to organize town halls. I've like tried to do them a couple times, or like had friends try to do them, and honestly, it's hard to get some of these people there because they know that they're gonna get asked hard questions.
I mean, even paying attention, like that is the first step of accountability, is like paying attention. Because what we do see is that they have been so used or have become accustomed to not being held accountable, or to no one paying attention to state politics. And like that is changing. And it's because of people who like watch this and engage with our content. And then like, you know, the birth of, you know, independent nonprofit journalism and things like the Arkansas Advocate that does strictly state reporting. Like all of that is so critical to getting this in front of people's eyes, empowering our audience for you to talk to your colleagues and your family members and your loved ones and say, like, did you know this is happening? Like, it's not a right or left thing. It's just like a abuse of power thing, or it's a whatever. Like all of that is that first step to where when we start to pay attention, and we saw this with Learns and with teacher pay, is like they freak out when you start to pay attention. They're like, wait, what? And they don't know what to do. They don't because they haven't had to answer for those votes or those policies in the past. And now they do. And with a little bit of pressure, the public can shape that. Now, sometimes we can't during the legislative process, but we can, if they don't listen to us during the legislative process, we can shape that at the ballot box. So that's what's great about it. As depressing as all of this is, and like we're sitting here and we want to cry about all these terrible policies and the things that they ignored, there's another chance. We have a chance in 2024 to shake things up. And we have a chance from now until then to start asking these questions of these lawmakers who are currently in office, or potential candidates who want to replace these lawmakers. These are questions you can ask candidates, because that is also something we need to do, is we need to vet these candidates better. If we're looking to replace someone, well, we need to know that who we're replacing them with is not going to do the same crap. Mm-hmm. We gotta get engaged and stay engaged.
Yeah. Because speaking from personal experience, been in this since 2014, and not a lot has changed, but we've had wins throughout that time. And those small wins eventually add up and add up and add up. And I think the more, like you said, the more that people just pay attention and acknowledge what's happening around them and connect the dots between like why this actually matters and how it affects their everyday lives, that's when we start to see really significant change. And I am hopeful that will come soon. or at least pick up some more steam.
I'm hopeful it will come soon too. Um, this is shameless, but we also exist because of small dollar donations. So if you want to contribute to our work, you're welcome to. Well, quickly, let's cover some good things that they actually did. And like, we're being nice and generous with these. They're not big, bold policy ideas, but they are worth noting. So a couple things, there's a new law that equates a GED to a diploma. So you can't like discriminate on if somebody, when you're hiring somebody, if they have a GED, it's the same as a diploma. There was, an expansion of family courts for those affected by mental health, and any kind of specialty court expansion is really great for kind of reducing unnecessary incarceration rates and like getting people on a track to rehabilitation instead of just throwing them in prison and then having to pay for that as taxpayers. So specialty courts are always a pretty good idea to mitigate that. There was this one bill that for this one county that expands sobering centers, which is kind of like the same idea with specialty courts, but like with on the front end. So if somebody is arrested for being intoxicated, they can be taken to a sobering center, which would address their alcoholism and avoid just sending them to prison. That expands the definition of sobering to include things beyond alcoholism. So that's good. There are a couple things like some Medicaid reimbursement bills that were really good that passed. One would have proper reimbursements for people who get prostate screenings. There was one that will properly reimburse providers for IUDs or reversible long-term contraceptives, which will help, decrease unwanted pregnancies or unplanned pregnancies. There's that one bill that passed, that the parenting and school bill, that would give students who are parents or caretakers excused absences to take care of kids or family issues. Are there some that you want to cover, Hannah?
Yeah. So there's also reimbursements for mothers or for mother depression screenings, which is really great. Really good bill. Uh, Foster care family leave. I think that's a really, really good bill.
Yeah.
Excited about that one. Reimbursements for first responders, mental health treatments. Really, really good. I know that a lot of our first responders end up developing PTSD and other mental health issues just because of what they have to see every day on their job. And the Rural Hospital Act that increased federal funds for hospitals in trouble. We know that there are some rural hospitals in Arkansas that are struggling and need some help with funding. Especially coming out of COVID. I know that they're still understaffed. I have a friend that works in hospitals, and she tells me all the time how understaffed they are. So, let's see.
Yeah, there's one that passed the last week that was really great to see. I think Representative Tara Shepard, she's a freshman, and she passed like drug fentanyl test kits for schools to be administered by nurses. I think it was a test kit, anyway, it was like so great. And everybody was like super thrilled about it. And all of these Republicans came up and just like said how hard she worked on it. And then she was like, yeah, I worked really hard on it. And everybody was like, this is going to save lives. And then they all cheered. And I was like, can we have more of this, please? Like, can we do
This
more?
is how we protect kids. Like,
yeah, it was like a very like textbook example of bipartisan legislative work that helps people and saves lives. And everybody was excited. And it happened like the last week, which I'm like, I wanted all of that throughout the entire session.
Right. They become more like amicable the last 2 weeks of session because they're all ready to leave. So
yeah, That was a good one. And it's a great bill. And also, I think it was just a great demonstration of collaboration and support. Yeah, I also just, before we wrap up, I also wanted to give a hat tip to Representative Lee Johnson, who was the chair of the House Public Health Committee. Representative Johnson is also a doctor. And one, a lot of these positive bills that we saw come out that help people are public health bills. That's kind of really the one big bucket that these good bills came out of. It wasn't a lot.
That's so surprising to me.
It is. And to be fair, like with Medicaid in Arkansas, and like I know that there are people on the right who like think it's terrible that we still have such good Medicaid, but like no one in Arkansas should go broke because they get sick. And like that is just hands down, period, whatever. And we need to take care of our people, and Arkansas tries to do that through Medicaid. And so like a lot of these bills are again, the Medicaid reimbursements, making sure Medicaid providers are properly reimbursed so they can get these services out to people who need them most. So all that to say, like, shout out to Representative Johnson, because not only did a lot of these bills come through his committee, he also took his committee chair position so seriously. And on his agenda, he was very clear about which bills were being heard that day, which bills would be heard in the future, communicating that with the public, communicating that with stakeholders and with legislators. And it was kind of the one breath of fresh air procedurally in the legislature that were like, we didn't have to worry about like, are they going to pull a fast one over anyone? Like right. He wasn't playing political games, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You can tell he cares deeply about public health, and he and I might not be values aligned on everything, but like I saw his leadership on display. I saw him take his job seriously. And I just want to say thank you to him for being an example of that, and for giving us a little bit of hope that not every committee has to be this big publicity stunt about scoring political points, but that you can actually put your head down and do the work, and good things can happen because of it. So thank you, Representative Johnson.
Yes, thank you.
I hope he returns to the chair position.
Yeah.
And I know they really care about my opinion, so.
Right.
Ooh, any shout outs you want to give?
No.
That is fair.
I think I've given out the shout outs in our previous, so you can just go watch those, Anyway, I think that's it. Is that it?
I think it's
now. Okay.
I think it's it. Those are our legislative summaries. We're gonna do some deep dives where we talk about some issues, interview some folks. We've got a criminal justice interview out that you can listen to or watch or read about. We're going to talk about healthcare going forward. We're going to talk about abuse of power and government overreach, because that is an evergreen theme with our state. We're going to talk about transparency and accountability. We're going to talk about the importance of being engaged and involved at your local community level, as things like school board elections are just around the corner for some of our districts. So please make sure that you are informed if you have a school board race in your community. Yeah. And if there's something you want us to talk about that we haven't, drop us a line. We want to hear from you. Yeah. We're probably going to be in a better mood for like the next 18 months.
Yeah, exactly. Always feels better after it's all over. So all right, y'all. Well, until next time.
Bye.
See you later. Thank you for watching and or listening. Again, we are 4AR people, and we're here to connect the dots for everyday Arkansans so that they can see how policy affects their everyday lives. Head over to our website, 4arpeople.org, to sign up for our newsletter. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast. Thanks again. See you next time.